This is Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life on a Monday morning. My name is Ayokunmi, and we're having a great time on the Smooth Breakfast, getting you ready for your workday and, of course, your week as well. This is the best way to get things started. I'm about to talk about business on Business Express. So if you're just tuning in, you are in at the best possible time possible. Yes, best possible time. Yes, possible. I said that twice. But anyways, we're going to have a conversation this morning centered around Nigeria's inflation. Numbers are out, and we've seen that Nigeria's inflation has risen to 33.8% in October. And we need to talk about these issues because the numbers just keep going up and up and up. And we just begin to wonder, where is the respite for Nigerians who are living in Nigeria right now? But anyways, joining me this morning to have this conversation is Oyinkansola Aregbesola. She is an investment research analyst at ARM Securities. Very good morning to you, Oyinkansola. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so right off the bat, because I am really curious to understand what exactly is going here. What were the triggers for the uptick in headline inflation?
Right. Okay. So the reason why we saw the increase in headline inflation was basically because of the two subcomponents, which is both food inflation and core inflation.
Mm,
Food inflation, jacked up again in October, and the main reason is because there was, of course, a report about flooding in some part of Nigeria, particularly the food producing states, and that affected food prices. But then let's not forget the pass-through effect of higher fuel prices on transportation. So the cost of transporting for transportation generally, shot up. Then that also, impacted inflation. So both the core inflation and the food inflation basket is responsible for the uptick.
mhm. Okay, now I'm actually glad you mentioned food inflation because that is something that a lot of Nigerians will look at and be tearing their heads out to say, what? I mean, it climbed to 39.16%. And I'm afraid to ask this question. Do you see this upward trajectory continuing? Is there any respite for us? Because we need to eat.
Yes. Okay. So, in terms of maybe seeing if food inflation rise further, I'm actually expecting food inflation to climb further,
Oh, yeah.
and this is because of the projection from the early famine warning system network. So basically, they do more like a projection on um, um, eh, more like a projection on harvest season, food security, basically. And the outlook for food security is that, is going to be below average, through May 2025. So, that's the outlook for now. So that could, affect food inflation, in the short term. So I expect to see, further increase in that basket.
Okay. I need to just hold on that thought for you out there listening to us right now. We're talking food inflation here. I mean, how has it hit you, and how exactly are you managing the situation? I need you to send us a message on WhatsApp on 0809 444 0981. You can also join us on YouTube. We're streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. You can drop a comment there if you would prefer that. So that being said, because I mean, looking at where we are now in terms of these numbers, now, let's spare a thought for a family, husband, wife, one kid, two kids, three kids. What can they do to strategize in order to manage these increases? Because it is absolutely ridiculous. The price of eggs now and so many other things, families are, resorting to different formations, 100, 101. And even what they eat isn't nutritious anymore, especially where kids are concerned. I mean, what can families even do? Because I don't know anymore.
Well, in order to manage the, consistent increase in inflation, I think what, families can adopt is, for example, the first thing is they need to prioritize essential expenses. And what do I mean? Basically focus on wants to maintain financial stability. But
Okay.
aside that, they can also, consider bulk purchasing or cooperative buying. That is, you can save you can save costs by buying in bulk, or you're pooling resources with others. So let's say, for example, I can use the egg as an example. I know
Mm,
that, an average price of one egg is, I think, about 250. I know because I buy I buy egg a lot, so it's about 250. But you can actually cut down the costs, by buying in bulk. So let's say, yes, you don't have the means to buy maybe two crates of,
mm.
5 crates of egg, but you then pool your resources with others, maybe like people in the community, and then come together to buy, a winning buy directly from the market, that is the wholesale price. So by the
Okay.
time you cut down, by the time you divide it in the number of eggs available, you see that the average cost of buying one is now less, rather than you just going to the maybe retail shop supermarket to buy your own eggs.
Mm-hmm,
So you can
mm-hmm.
actually consider that. Also, you could families could, especially those that have access to land, they could consider growing some food products. I currently have vegetable in my garden, so I mean I don't need to buy. I don't need to buy. I don't need to go to the market to buy. So if you have access to land, why not do some form of garden? Yeah.
Well, I think at this point, right now, a lot of Nigerians have been forced to become farmers. Even, I mean, at home, there's a small Ewedu garden in the back. So, yeah, what it is that we can do, there's some yams in the sack as well. So I'm just waiting for that to, to actually sprout and all. So that is where we are. Well, I mean, if it's doable for people, not everybody, unfortunately,
Yes.
has the luxury of, the space in their homes and all that. But it's something to actually look at if it is doable for different individuals. It's not the most ideal, but we need to do what it is that we can to make things easier for ourselves along the road. Okay, let's talk about investors as well, because you can't have conversations about inflation without talking about investors. As an investor, would you suggest adjusting your portfolio in any way to accommodate this rise in the numbers?
I mean, yes, definitely. Because I mean, if you continue to hold whatever form of investment you're holding without regard to inflation, it could actually erode whatever profits that you think you have made. So it's actually important
Okay.
to review your portfolio from time to time. So to combat inflation, of course, I would say that in scenario clients could consider inflation-linked bonds, because generally the price of bonds, or what we call them, the interest rates, the interest on bonds, have like
Mm,
a direct correlation with inflation numbers. And looking at what the that's the federal government bonds now, and treasury bills, we're looking at the interest rates that they are doing now. It's high. That is historically, it is high compared to historical numbers. So of
right,
course, but
right.
although the figures is not, that is not exactly, of course, it's not 33% like inflation numbers, but at
Mm,
least there's some form of savings. If you, instead of leaving your money in cash, why not invest it in federal government bonds, that currently have high interest or high coupon rates. But aside that, if you're, because if we're talking about investors, we also need to talk about their risk appetite. So if you're an investor that you have a high risk appetite, you could
okay.
actually look at equities. I mean, equities most times outperform. You could you could invest in a particular stock and it goes up like 200% in just a year, and that's
That is
higher than
massive.
the inflation. Yes, higher than inflation number. But the downside is that you could lose as much. So if that's why I said your risk appetite have to come in play. So, but then if we're talking about equities, you can also look at sectors that historically would outperform inflation, or they do well in season, in a time of inflationary period. So sectors like banking, for example, offers that opportunity. So you can look at sectors like banking or consumer goods or industrial goods, and invest in companies that are within that sectors. You could also diversify into US dollar denominated assets, as a
Okay.
way to protect yourself against further depreciation.
Okay, I'm actually glad you mentioned USD denominated assets because a number of people have actually spoken about that as a way to hedge against inflation. Do you think that is still the way right now?
Well, looking at US dollar or or securities, they actually
Securities, yes.
yeah they actually continue to be a preferred edge against against inflation, giving, and this is because of their general stability relative to the naira. So, with the naira experiencing significant depreciation, if you're holding assets in strong foreign currency, you would actually be in a better position. So, especially the US dollar. So, yes, it's still like a valid means, to preserve your purchasing power.
All right. And we know that the CBN has been hiking the rates in the last couple of meetings. I mean, does this mean that come the next MPC meeting, I think on the 25th of November, if I'm correct, are we likely to see another hike in the rates? Looking at the trajectory up until this point.
Or looking at their body language from the last meeting, I mean, we're expecting them that's when inflation declined. We are actually expecting them to hold rates, but then we saw them increase rates further. And of course, their reason is they need to, continue to combat inflation and also narrow the negative real rate of return. So, and seeing that inflation has now picked up again, there's really no I won't say I would say that there's really no incentive for them to either hold rates or cut rates. We would actually definitely
Hmm.
see them increase rates further. We'd see them increase by, let's say, 50 basis points at the next meeting.
Ah, okay. Thank you for that, Oiko. So, I mean, before I let you go this morning, I need to put you on the spot here. I'm sorry for doing it, but hey, it's in my power to do so. Do you see in 2025 um, any type of moderation in the inflationary numbers? Because we need a break.
Right. Okay, so for in terms of moderation inflation rates, it really depends heavily on policy implementation. So if you see the fiscal policy align with the monetary policy, and then the of course the implementation as well, not just pushing out policies, but if you see
Hmm.
them implemented properly, we could actually see
Properly.
decline.
Thank you for
Yes,
that.
we could actually see a deceleration in inflation rates because the major issue right now is higher transportation costs, higher energy costs, higher depreciating naira. So if you should see naira appreciate, and that would depend on good policies being implemented, we'll definitely see inflation decelerate in 2025.
All right, from your mouth to God's ears. Even though I know that, like you said, there needs to be a meeting of the minds when it comes to the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. No amount of prayer is going to change anything unless those two are at par. Let me take a message as we round up the conversation this morning. Tyre says the government is fighting inflation on paper and not in practice. If you pull resources, please match it with discipline because resources, even the essential ones, are no longer affordable. Hmm. I went to the market and spent over 40K and left there with four. So I can fully relate to that because it is wild. And he further says, I have cooking pots. Just drop the address. I'll find you, like Liam Neeson. Tayo, you want to address Abi. Anyways, if you are looking for me, you can easily find me at Sir Matt Busby Way, Old Trafford, Stretford, Manchester. So make of that what you will. Anyways, you got to go. Thank you so much, Oyinkansola, for joining me this morning. I've been talking to Oyinkansola
Thank you
Aregbesola.
for
She
having me.
is an investment research analyst at ARM Securities. Do have a great morning, a great Monday, and a great week ahead.
And you too. Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you for sticking tuned to Smooth 98.1 and the Smooth Breakfast. Don't go anywhere. There's more great music lined up for you as we get along to 7:30, where we take a deep dive into the papers on Freshly Pressed.